Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be changing over the power steering reservoir and flushing the power steering system on this BMW E63. Now the reason I'm going to start off with doing this first is because I've already got the parts in today, I've already got the fluid, so I'm going to go ahead and flush it, get it out of here because it has got the wrong fluid in it. As many of you guys know, it's a common mistake many garages make by putting ATF fluid in these cars. So we need to get it out and put the original CHF fluid back in this car. And I am going to be changing the reservoir because the reservoir is all very shabby and it's leaking. So it does need a new power steering reservoir as well. So let's get onto this video and start flushing the power steering fluid on this BMW E63.
What? Goddamn, get it done, will ya? Woo. When the blow up now, everybody's so unusual with it. Shit. But said times in his rhymes cause his memories. We running through New York.
So I know many of you like to see the power steering fluid first before obviously I change it, just so you guys know as well how damaged it is. You can see right here, it's in very poor state. It's got all dirt around it and all oil where it's been leaking out. You can see there as well on the dipstick, it ain't even to the fill mark either. The O-ring that sits around there is actually completely gone. And obviously we're just going to be taking out the reservoir and putting on the new one. I've got a new male one, so we'll put that on and just get this out. Do remember, you've got two locking clips that hold these two hoses on that go to the reservoir. So you are going to need to have either locking clips or Jubilee clips when you actually remove the two hoses, which I'll show you later on after we've bled the system. I am going to leave this cap off also when we actually flush the system. Then we'll go and use the steering once I've pulled the hose from the lower radiator, which goes back to actually cool the power steering fluid, to flush it completely out. I'm not going to use a syringe to take it out of the reservoir itself because we'll just do the steering to flush it completely out when I put my actual drainer underneath to drain all the steering fluid. So let's get on to actual flushing the power steering fluid. So you'll see right here guys, this is the hose we're going to take off, and I'm going to put my drainer under here before we go ahead and do that. We're just going to push this back and it should remove the hose. I don't want to do that just yet, otherwise it will go all over my floor. So we'll just pull this hose off, get the drainer under here. Then we're going to have to lower the car so we can turn the steering left to right to drain out any other fluid to completely flush the system. Then we'll put the hose back on and go up to the reservoir and put the new reservoir on after we've done that. So let's get on to doing it. So I've got the drainer in place now. Now what we're going to do is just push this off, just like that. And you'll see all the power steering fluid will now come out the car, which you can see it's leaking out. You need to be careful when you do this. Obviously I'm using a drainer, so you can hear there, I've got my drainer, whilst we'll drain all the fluid, and I'll keep the hose down so it can all come out. And this is how you would actually flush the power steering system. Once that's finished draining, we'll come back and I'll show you how to connect back the hose, and then we'll move up to the steering reservoir. Okay guys, so now this is finished draining. You can see it just dripping. What we're gonna go ahead and do is just connect this back up. Okay guys, and once that's back up, now what we're gonna go ahead and do is move to the power steering reservoir, which is at the top, and start disconnecting all the hoses to be able to change over the reservoir. Okay guys, so to remove the reservoir, all you're gonna need to do is get your 10mm socket and just release the bolts here. Then you're going to want to lift up the reservoir. Then what you're gonna want to do is unclip all the clamps, which are locking clamps down the side here. And as you can see, now that's the reservoir off. We just need to get this bracket off and transfer it to our new one. Now to obviously remove this bracket, all you're gonna want is to remove that bolt. Obviously that will remove this whole bracket, and you slot this one onto your new reservoir, and that's it. Now the bracket is off the reservoir, and this is the old reservoir. You can see the state of that. It's very, very bad. We are gonna put stick back in it and then just leave it and bin it because we have no need for it. So we're gonna be getting rid of this one and binning it. So as you can see here guys, we've got a new male one. So this is the one we're gonna be using for the replacement. As you can see, it's not a cheap Chinese one, it's actually a German one. You can see here, it's brand new, not second hand, none of that. So what we're gonna do is now slot this into bracket and pull it in, back in where it goes. So the hoses will go like this, so the big one, so the hoses will go this way round, so you'll have the big one going towards your passenger side and the small one coming towards the engine. So as you can see guys, we're gonna be using Jubilee clips to actually put the power steering hose back on, because obviously they were locking clips. Not everyone's gonna have them or use them. So we'll just put these back on. They're a lot more, they're much easier to actually tighten after. So they fit perfectly on the hose. So we're just gonna remove the air box first guys, just so we can get the hoses on back onto the power steering reservoir. Okay guys, so now it's all fitted properly. Do make sure the hose are the right way, because otherwise you end up in a lot of problems. You want to make sure all the hoses are facing the correct way on the system and they're not going to interfere with anything. And then what you want to do is just tighten them all down. Very, very easy. Just use a 7mm socket if you're using Jubilee clips and just tighten it all down together. And do remember, this don't have to be tight. This is only holding power steering hose. Do not go crazy tight with it, as you'll cut through the hose and you'll break off the plastic pipe. So you just want to tighten it till it's snug down, and then the same for the little one. So as you can see, guys, they're all tightened down. So now we'll just put this all back in. Now we'll put the air box back in. Okay guys, so now everything's back together. What we're going to go ahead and do is just fill it up with the fluid, which is the CHF fluid that I've got. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We'll just fill that up, and now what we're going to go ahead and do is now start bleeding the power steering system to get all the air out of the system to the top of the reservoir, and then we'll fill it back up. So now the fluid's gone down. Now we're going to top it up. And this is what we'll keep doing until we bleed all the system. Check it again. And it seems to be staying at the level, guys. So that's the job done on how to bleed and flush your power steering fluid. Okay guys, so there you have it. I've now shown you how to flush your power steering fluid and obviously change the reservoir. As I said to you, just make sure you have 2 Jubilee clips, make sure you measure the size of the hose and go and get the right Jubilee clips. Obviously, you don't always need to get the exact size because obviously they can tighten up to the actual size, or you can open them up enough to get them round. But you don't want them where they're too tight or too thick and you ain't got no leverage to actually tighten them up. You want them quite open, so then that way you've got adjustment to actually tighten them up and make sure the hose stays steady on the reservoir. You've seen me actually change that. I put the new fluid in. You saw how I drain the fluid. Very, very simple to do. Pull the lower hose off from the lower radiator from the actual power steering hose and let it just drain. Just turn the steering wheel lock to lock till it flushes the whole system. Reservoir is full, and you saw when we went up there, it was completely empty and ready to just take off. That's the way to do it. I know a lot of people do use syringes and empty the reservoir before they change it, but that's not the correct procedure to actually bleed these systems. So the next thing you actually see on this car, guys, is going to be a coolant flush, and we're going to be replacing certain other components on this car that go alongside with the coolant hoses. So thank you very much for watching, guys. It's BMW Dr. Dean here, and goodbye.